Welcome to The Impact Equation, conversations with leaders shaping a brighter future, with me, Adam Pike.
And me, Rafi Adelstone. With our special guests, we unlock the secrets of those who dare to transform our world. We talk to architects of change, pioneers in their fields, working towards a brighter future for us all. In each episode, we dig into each element of the impact equation.
Today's guest is Jack Prevezer, co-founder and COO of Ezra Coaching, a leading global virtual coaching and learning provider that is changing the game of professional development and workplace well-being. Ezra has been on an incredible growth journey since starting in 2019 and now operates across 6 continents, 87 countries, and has delivered over 600,000 coaching sessions for employees of some of the biggest companies in the world, including the likes of Microsoft, AstraZeneca, Kraft Heinz, and Spotify.
This year, as part of their mission to improve lives in the workplace, Ezra announced a new exciting partnership with New York Times bestseller and global leadership guru, Simon Sinek, to give away free coaching to thousands of frontline workers in need across healthcare and the education sector. Before Ezra, Jack established himself as a leading advisor on innovation and impact, and outside of work just so happens to be one of our very good friends. Jack, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. I'm big fans of your podcast.
Thank you so much, Jack. So let's start where we normally start. You've always been committed to impact. You've always wanted to drive system change in your career. Tell us why. Where did that come from? And just give us a bit of a sense of how it's gone through your career journey.
It's a great question. I think if I can be relatively open, we all come from a community where I think there's an ethos around giving back and healing the world, and a culture of volunteerism and supporting others. And I think that's something that was really honed in on me from an early age, with my family, with my friends, with my grandparents, kind of culture of service and supporting those in need. And I think that's stuck with me through the years. I was very involved, as you were, in youth organizations, youth education, camp counseling. And this is all something that I took with me into my adult life and into my career and profession. I think I started my career working in like a sabbatical position for a youth organization in the Jewish community, really focused on, again, supporting and giving back. And I took that in with me when I decided to start my kind of business professional career in strategy consulting.
You went to university, and was this something that you were thinking about when you were studying, or did it feel like a parallel topic?
So I saw myself kind of really focused on a career that does macro change, whether that's supporting economic development in kind of underserved areas. And it kind of guided me after doing my year supporting and working in the youth sector, when I took a career in strategy consulting, I chose a firm that specifically had both a philanthropic and an international development consulting arm. And so that was the intent when I went into consulting. But one of the other things that I think I really learned working in the kind of non-profit sector for my year working in youth education, I also realized just the skills deficit that comes often when you're working in the NGO and the impact sector. We were so reliant on our alumni network, who were bankers, lawyers, consultants, HR experts, people with hard skills in the workplace that were relevant and were lacking. I was a junior young person starting my career, and I benefited greatly from the wisdom and the support that our alumni could give. And it kind of taught me that if we want to change the world, there is real value in developing a more rounded skill set.
Ezra is, or Ezra Coaching, again, an incredible growth journey. But just to begin with, just to keep it nice and simple, what problem is Ezra trying to solve?
So Ezra, maybe to explain Ezra and what we do in a little bit more detail. So we are one of the leading virtual coaching providers in the world. This is business executive coaching, professional coaching to support people in the workplace to become better managers, to become better leaders. And if we take a step back in 2018, when we started thinking about this idea, executive coaching is a very established, but actually a very prohibitive instrument for changing behavior and changing lives in the workplace. The term executive coaching tells you that it's exclusive. It was a category to support executives, those at the top of the organizational pyramid. It was expensive, it was costly, and organizations couldn't scale what we thought was a superpower. When you get a one-to-one professional to support you. In many other analogous industries and sport, everyone gets a coach. In most other areas, we give people the support that they need. And in the workplace, which of course for the overwhelming majority of people working in white collar professions, people get promoted because they're technically good at what they do. They might be a great analyst, they might be a great seller, but they suddenly get promoted into management positions, which has a tremendous sphere of influence. And organizations typically don't give them the support that they need as they enter into that frontline management or frontline leadership. And the impact of bad management, bad leaders is quite significant.
The most important person in your life, right? The most important person on your well-being is not your spouse, it's not your children, it's not your mates, it's your manager.
Exactly. And the number one reason people leave their jobs?
Bad manager. Micromanager.
Bad manager. Bad manager. It's not because of money. To kind of break it down, you'd think it might be about money. It might be about title. It might be around career trajectory. It's bad management.
And is there a particular kind of bad manager? Because, you can have lots of different ways in which you can be poorly managed, right? I once had a very good manager who, in the GC organization, who I happen to be talking to you right now. But go on, what kind of bad managers do you sort of see and want to sort of address?
Yeah, bad management can go in so many different ways, particularly frontline managers. When we designed Ezra, really the kind of initial user case was how do we support these middle managers? Middle managers, frontline managers in an organization, we often call the frozen middle, because these managers don't get the support. And yet they are looking after sometimes 10, 20, in a call center, 50 line reports. You cannot give people the support that you need when you're managing 50 people. It is impossible to do so. And then the role of a manager is changing in an organization. If you rewind 10, 20, 30 years, a role of a manager is quite directive. It's a line report, you direct, it's authoritative. That expectation of a manager has changed. And it's been accelerated in the world of COVID. We talk about mental health in the workplace, but a manager has to be more than just a director of work. They have to support the individual. They have to enable them. They have to empower them. There's a model of management around servant management or servant leadership. And they are there in support of their people, and they're there to lead and to inspire. So we're asking our managers to do more, yet we're not giving them the support they need in terms of their soft skill development, how to have performance conversations, how to give feedback, how to motivate, how to engage, how to network in a corporate environment. These are all skills that we believe are coachable. And when you coach them, it can make a profound difference, not just to the manager, but there's this ripple effect to all 10, 20, 50 line reports. They're going to benefit as well.
Jack, you mentioned the original thesis being about middle managers. Can you talk a bit about how Ezra's sort of theory of change has changed itself since its inception?
Exactly. When we designed Ezra very much on how do we democratize the superpower of coaching. We had this mission and vision that we wanted anyone in the organization, anyone in a company to be able to access a coach. So that was our mission and our vision. And I think we've evolved that thinking quite significantly. What we've learned is that when you coach at scale, it's very different. When you coach one Adam Pike or one Rafi Adelstone, you're going to make them a better manager. You're going to make them a better leader. Hopefully you're going to make them a better person. They're going to be better in their workplace. They're going to be happier, more fulfilled. That has a halo effect at home, with friends, with family, potentially in other work they do. Makes a profound difference at an individual level, and there's a ripple effect around that. But when you coach 100 Adams in an organization, when you coach 1,000 Adams in an organization, and you do it with clear intention, it's very clear how you're taking a group of people from A to B through one-to-one coaching. So when you're intentional in the coaching, you don't just transform 100 Adams or 1,000 Adams, transform organizations. That ripple effect becomes exponential. And when you transform organizations, you make the workplace more inclusive, more productive, happier. And that, for me, is really what we're in the business of. We're in the business of behavioral change, but we're also in the business of transforming organizations and making them better workplaces.
So, Jack, if you can you take us inside of a Spotify or a Microsoft, one of your clients, and just bring it to life for us a little bit about how that theory translates in practice?
So a typical client organization we work with, including some of the names you mentioned, we will typically coach in the hundreds and sometimes in the thousands on an annual basis. And our mission is to embed one-to-one coaching, one-to-one development across the employee lifecycle and what we call the moments that matter in your career. And that moments that matter, they might start when you enter the workplace as a graduate, when you become a manager for the first time, when you become a manager of the managers, effectively a leader, but also transitional moments in your career. When you join a company, how do you support someone in those first 100 days? When you return to work after, for example, parental leave, mothers have one of the highest attrition rates in organization. And they leave the workplace, they have a child, they come back 6 to 12 months later. The workplace is very different. Their priorities are very different. And disproportionately, they leave the company. So supporting people in these transitional moments in their career makes a profound difference. And so with our largest client organizations where we're coaching in the thousands, there is an Ezra moment. There is an Ezra coach at every step in the employee lifecycle. And that allows organizations to offer this, to scale this. And an organization does this because they know it makes a difference. People are more likely to stay in the company. They're more likely to be productive. They're going to perform better. And there is this halo effect that comes with that.
What do you track in terms of the sort of impact metrics that you have? Like, you talked about attrition, you talked about productivity. Is there well-being? Like, do you get into that? How do you do that?
Yeah, we do. So first thing, we have 35 behaviors at Ezra that we think are coachable. So we've designed a proprietary assessment, behavioral assessment. So we ask every individual when they enter into the coaching, they undergo a behavioral assessment. And we are measuring effectively their perceived strengths on key competencies, these 35 behaviors. And we measure at the beginning and the end. We invite the line manager. We also invite their peers. It can become what we call a 360 in the industry. And we're able to measure by doing it at the beginning and the end. At the beginning, we're able to establish a baseline. Where does the individual sit in terms of their communication skills, in terms of their ability to give feedback and have difficult conversations relative to others in the organization or relative to others in a similar or adjacent industry? But 3-6 months later, when the coaching engagement comes to the end, what is the perceived improvement across these key competencies? And on average, and we've done this hundreds of thousands of people now, on average, we deliver a 15% observed improvement over the course of what is typically a 6-month engagement. And what that means is that individuals 6 months later emerge 15% more confident, 15% better at communicating and giving feedback. And that's something that doesn't necessarily feel a lot, but I often use the analogy with my teams. If we walked into a bank and gave our money and 6 months later got a 15% return, that is incredible. That's statistically significant. It makes a big difference. And so that's the first way we measure behavioral change. The second way is, what does it mean to an organization, though, for Rafi to be 15% better at communication? And how does that translate into some of the harder business outcomes? And for that to happen, we're able also to measure organizational impact. What is the impact on these individuals and their ability to stay motivated, to stay engaged? That leads ultimately to reducing attrition, increasing retention. What does it mean if you communicate better by 15%, what does that mean in terms of your ability to perform better, to be more productive, to increase the top line? All of these things in terms of your career mobility, your accelerated path to promotion, all of these things we're able to track and measure. We have about a team of about 30 behavioral scientists sitting within our Ezra labs, occupational psychologists, industry psychologists, who every single day are working with our client organizations to track and measure that impact.
But then there's a third layer. So you talked about measuring the skills improvement, great. Then you talked about the organizational change, fantastic. Is there a third layer, which is societal change? What's the effect of that? How do you know that you're making a difference? Obviously, you can surmise it in a proxy sense, but how do you explore that? How do you understand that? How do you talk about it?
So it's a great question. And it's one we're still grappling with. I think we're comfortable. We often talk about in the land of ESG, we're not going to change climate change doing what we do. We're not going to change your governance, but we can make a difference to society. And some of it, as you said, is inferred. We do believe that when Rafi walks out of his hour coaching session a little more confident, a little more happy. His anxiety has been reduced a little bit. We know that has an impact. We can't necessarily measure it, but we know it has an impact in the way that Rafi then interacts with friends, family, colleagues. So some of that is inferred, but some of that makes a direct, intangible difference, and it depends with our client organizations. So one of the big pharma companies during the course of COVID, and they were delivering at record-breaking pace the vaccine rollout, we supported some of their frontline leaders doing that. Navigating change in an organization that is literally changing lives and saving lives.
That makes sense. Like you're improving productivity and the skills of people, depending on who they're working for, depends on what impact that has. So does that affect your decision making over who you work with? Like we can talk about the Simon Sinek thing in a minute as well, but are you coaching oil and gas companies to find more oil wells? Do you account for that in the same way as you would coaching the pharma company?
So we're industry agnostic. We work with the largest companies in the world, tech, pharma, consumer goods. We work with most industries, and every industry has a mission and a purpose. And I know, Rafi, you do a lot of work helping companies really find their mission and purpose. We certainly don't take a view on which companies to work for. We work with the biggest companies in our core markets. We focus on making lives better. We focus on supporting the managers, supporting the leaders, helping them to find their why, which is a philosophy that our brand partner, Simon Sinek, has often talked about. Finding your purpose, finding your why, finding a mission in the work that you do, we know makes a difference.
So Jack, I just want to take us up to the macro picture, if I may, because Ezra started, I believe you and Nick were in a small office in Camden, and now you're in 6 continents in 80 plus countries. So can you talk to us about what has been integral to that growth story?
Yeah.
What are the kind of the key ingredients to that?
So certainly, we launched Ezra in April 2019. McDonald's were our first ever customer. We supported 20 high potential leaders. And this is, of course, April 2019. And I would say a few things were different back then. Number one, there was a perception that one-to-one interpersonal relationships had to be in person. There was not necessarily a belief, certainly not normalization, that you can build a level of trust, a level of rapport, a level of emotional intimacy, relationships that come in a one-to-one context online. So that was the perception. And of course, we all know what happened in March 2020. The world shut down. The work didn't shut down. And leaders and managers were suddenly confronted with incredibly challenging workplace scenario challenges, personal challenges, professional, family challenges. And Ezra became a real tool to support these leaders and managers as they navigate change. So in March 2020, that world of virtual communication was normalized, but also this macro theme that hasn't gone away around change in the workplace, change in our environment, change in our political climate, pretty much across the world. We are continuing to navigate change at a macro and micro scale. And to me, there has been no more powerful instrument, and I have a coach at Ezra. And Adam, I know you are a professional coach as well. A coach plays a tremendous role in helping these managers, helping these leaders, helping these individuals navigate change in what is a highly problematic world that we live in.
Jack, if you were to reflect on sort of key inflection points along the way, what would you point to?
I think a few things. I think number one, even before COVID in that first year, it was always speculative. We didn't know that coaching online would make a difference in the same way that in-person did. So even before the world changed in March 2020, we were seeing the positive impact of one-to-one coaching and the benefit of scaling it. So the first thing we did that was truly disruptive was we built an offering that allowed organizations to scale something they wanted. And it didn't happen before. And when we started with some of these client organizations, they might have piloted with 20, 30, 40 people. Let's coach 50 managers and see if it makes a difference. When it did, the next frontier was, well, how do we scale this now? And how do we begin to offer this to our people in the hundreds and in the thousands? How do we make this a truly democratic and universal instrument or tool that employees can access? So the first inflection point was it works. And it works both at an individual level and it works at a scale level. Organizations see the value of it. And typically the clients that we work with, they go on that journey with us. And they increasingly, and this is also a reflection of, I think, the changing landscape of learning and development in the workplace. People, and we see it mirrored in all our lives, even including the consumer apps that we use. You know, if you're Spotify, if you go on Spotify, hyper personalized, hyper curated, your ability to have on demand access to what you want. And I think that's the same in the workplace. The old way of doing learning and development was, let's bring everyone together. Let's fly them to London, to New York, to Paris. Let's have an offsite. Let's do a bunch of workshops. People might be on their phone. They might be hungover. They're not listening, and they finish the week and they go away and they forget everything they learned. Now we're saying you can do things differently. You can get a one-to-one coach who can sustain the learnings, who can support you, not just during that week, but over the course of the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, to be that vital, personalized support as you progress in your career.
So tell us a bit more about the sort of growth journey. So it worked.
Yeah.
You started taking out to more companies. You then moved to New York to try, to sort of expand globally. Tell us all about that. How I suppose it'd be interesting to see this in the sort of context of impact, like how you're doing this. How are you thinking about the scale journey as an impact journey?
So I think the first thing to say, we have grown, and we've grown significantly. I have a philosophy, and we have a philosophy at Ezra to grow relatively sustainable. We're a business, we're about 400 full-time staff now across all the key continents. Our biggest markets are North America, UK, Canada, Singapore, Australia, but we're very active across the world. We've got teams and offices in all the key countries and continents. So we've been able to scale, and we try to do it in a sustainable way over the course of the last few years. We are supported, so we are owned by a very large corporate called the Adecco Group, one of the leading workforce planning companies in the world. They've been an amazingly patient and supportive investor and custodian of the business. And one of my philosophies in how you scale a venture, how you scale an idea from really conception to where we are today, is you have to do it in a way that I think is mission driven, and you protect your culture and you protect your people. So since day one, we've been fiercely protective of that, fiercely protective of building an independent, autonomous, relatively flat culture in our organization, focused on this North Star of transforming lives and transforming organizations. Everything bubbles back to that. And I think it's important that as we continue to grow at such a fast pace, that we've never lost sight of that mission as well.
Amongst our listeners, Jack, there are a number of people that are starting out and building mission-driven, impact-first companies. Any top tips that you can share with them?
Yeah, I think firstly, don't lose sight of just how important your mission is. It may change, but I don't think any startup or idea or business this day can survive without being mission-driven in some way. It might look different. Part of the mission might be internal. It might be building the world's greatest culture where you look after the people. It might just be in the spirit of service to whoever your customers are. But finding a mission, for me, is one of the most important ways that you retain culture, that you enable your talent, that you keep your talent, and ultimately you fulfill whatever your business or social goals are.
So talking about mission, tell us all about this relationship with Simon Sinek. What is it all about? What are you trying to do with it? Where's it going to go?
Yeah, so for our listeners not aware, Simon Sinek is one of the kind of leading thought leaders in the leadership development space. I think his TED Talk is the second most viewed TED Talk ever, a New York Times bestseller, and someone who's an incredibly inspirational thought leader for myself and for many people in this industry. And we approached Simon around a year ago, really with an idea integral to our mission, which is we were seeing all this change happening in frontline societal industries, healthcare, education, industries where we've got frontline professionals working their socks off, making a difference, changing lives, overworked, tired, stressed, and we wanted to give back, as did Simon. And Simon was very passionate about this. So we agreed to join forces, and we're in the process of our second campaign. The first campaign, we've We've been supporting over 1,000 frontline healthcare professionals in the US. These are the nurses on the front line, and we've been giving them coaching, complementary coaching, to really support them and make a difference. And we're in the process of finishing up our second campaign, which is supporting frontline teachers, both in the UK and the US. Teachers, we often talk about, play some of the most fundamental and transformational roles in all of us. Nearly all of us can remember one teacher who made a difference to us, who believed in us when maybe others didn't, early in our school life. And it's time to give back and say thank you to those people, because they change lives and they do it every single day.
Jack, would love to sort of finish by looking ahead to the future. Tell us about what the future has in store for Ezra and what the future has in store for Jack Prevezer.
So we're only getting started in this world of one-to-one development. When we launched Ezra, to illustrate using one of our biggest client organizations, when we launched Ezra, we started with this company coaching 50 people, and that was a big deal for them. And then last year, we coached 4,000 individuals in that organization. But there's 85,000 people in that organization. So we've done this amazing work together with the client organization in scaling and democratizing the superpower of one-to-one coaching, one-to-one development. We know it makes a difference, but we're only scratching the surface. There's 81,000 people in that organization still not benefiting from this superpower. So our mission is not to stop. Our mission is to make sure that everyone in the workplace gets access to one-to-one development that's real, that's hyper-personalized, that's relevant, that's developmental, that can make a difference in the moment. In order to do that, the world is changing, and we recognize we have to continue to bring the cost down significantly. We've already brought the cost down, but we're still ultimately supporting with one-to-one coaches. And so we have to continue to push forward and build new frontiers. And obviously the world of AI is going to play a significant part in that. We've just released our first AI feature, which is a role play. We call it Kai, Practice with Kai, which is helping individuals in specific scenarios where they can role play, how to have a difficult conversation, how to ask your manager for a promotion, for a pay rise, how to support someone, how to lead effectively and navigate change. So these are role plays. And we know that the future, if we're going to hit all 85,000 people in an organization and support them, the world of AI is going to play a significant part in that.
And so just to close, for listeners that are hearing the story and they want the coaching, they're looking for that superpower, how do you suggest that they get involved and pursue this opportunity?
So I think the first thing to say is, and certainly this is for anyone listening who works in a large enterprise organization, that is primarily the companies that we support at Ezra. The benefit of that is you have established HR teams, learning and development teams. Their job is really to partner and look after your development, look after your career. And I would say they're a fantastic resource and most people don't tap into. They probably perceive HR as the people who let you go, who do the employee relations stuff, the less glamorous stuff. But there's a world of HR that is focused on supporting you and developing you. And so for anyone looking for that one-to-one support, HR business partners are your friend. They can advocate on your behalf. And whether it's Ezra, whether it's other coaching providers, more boutique coaching providers or other platform providers like Ezra, most of these organizations now have access to the ability to support you with a coach. And I would say just ask for it, advocate it. Do not be afraid of owning your personal development and professional development, because it makes a difference. And it doesn't just make you a better individual in the workplace, it really will make you a better person in your daily lives as well.
And for anyone in a smaller business or impact-focused organization, this guy called Adam Pike I can introduce you to if you're looking for some coaching.
Yes, thank you.
Adam is I know Adam took coaching qualification with International Coaching Federation a couple of years ago now and is a phenomenal coach.
We're going to edit that part out. Jack, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a really great listen.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Really pleasure to join you. I love what you're doing in the podcast. Keep up the great work.
Thanks so much.
So Rafi, what did you think?
Well, first of all, it's so much fun to have one of our good friends on the podcast. What a pleasure. And it's amazing, what Jack's been done, what he's achieved with Ezra. incredible. It's such a massive enterprise now, from one room in Camden to 600,000 people being coached. I'm so proud and so delighted at the sort of success he's had and they're having and the impact that it's making. I suppose in the conversation, where I was really trying to drive into is like, he is a mission-driven guy, Jack. He's super mission-driven. How does he see the relationship between coaching and making the world a better place? Like, what does that actually look like? And then we really started to get into that and start to understand, when you're thinking about making impact at scale, often the impact's a few levels away. It's not necessarily immediately direct. There's something you're doing in the system that drives an effect that has a third or tertiary effect that actually is what we need to see. And if the most important thing for your mental state is your direct line manager, obviously coaching and the scaling coaching is just the most important thing for people's well-being in the whole world. So I'm really delighted that we managed to, we decided to bring him on.
Do you have a coach, Rafi? Do you have a coach?
I've had a few different coaches in my time. I don't have a coach at the moment, other than you. And I've always enjoyed it. I think for me, the coaching, I don't know, maybe this isn't right, but for me, coaching has just been about somebody helping you organize your thoughts. It's like giving you encouragement around, you know what you think, how you want to behave and how you can be better, but somebody helping you to sort of structure that thinking and sort of be someone just lean on in terms of, encouraging. I don't know what the right word is, just a supporter is just really helpful. What do you tell me? You're a coach. What do you see as the sort of superpower of coaching?
Well, I think I was persuaded by what Jack was sharing about how the individual contributions, individual sense of satisfaction can sort of feed into progress at work. A lot of the issues that we rub up against at work are and can be as a result of challenges and things that people are dealing with, finding hard to express, and all those behaviors come out in the wrong ways. So I buy into that thesis because I see it sort of every day in the interactions that I have, certainly. But I guess the big question here is how you go from a program of 50 people within one of the big corporations that Jack mentioned to supporting staff at a global level. One of the things I'd love to have got into a bit more in detail is how they match coaches, because there are a lot of cultural considerations, linguistic considerations that matter when you're operating that scale, which is sort of 6 continents and 87 countries, which is just insane. But yeah, fantastic conversation. Great to have it with you.
Yeah, really, really good. I'd say the one area that I like to go a bit, we'll pick up with him in the pub later, is, it depends on your vision for the future. But let's say as the poly crisis continues, as things get more difficult, we're already seeing that in the news yesterday, The Guardian had a whole expose on McKinsey and how McKinsey are really advancing oil and gas excavation. Services businesses like Ezra, like the Adecco Group, are going to need to start to account for who they're working with. And obviously Jack's got an incredible story about the positive side. I'd love to sort of in the future dig into maybe how we can use coaching as a tool to help companies do better rather than just be better. If that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Using that superpower for super good, in other words.
Exactly. Thanks everyone listening. See you next time on The Impact Equation.